Waterloo, and York. These 6 regions are large. Their populations are around 500,000 or more and represent some of Ontario's fastest growing communities, where increased housing supply is most desperately needed. So this assessment will ultimately help us best determine the best mix of roles and responsibilities between the upper and lower tier municipalities in those regions to allow them to get shovels in the ground faster so that they can build the housing needed to support their growing populations. So the legislation that we're proposing would also give me the authority to appoint the current regional chairs of Niagara, Peel, and York to the current term of council. If these proposals are passed, I intend to reappoint the following regional chairs: Jim Bradley in Niagara, Nando Ionisi in Peel, and Wayne Emerson in York Region. So by reappointing these 3 chairs, we can draw on their knowledge and their experience to work with the provincially appointed facilitators and provide an accurate assessment of how the regions can best work with the province to adapt to the new strong mayor powers. As you all know, Premier Ford has already indicated that our government is looking to expand strong mayor powers to other municipalities that are shovel-ready, committed to growth, and to cutting red tape. The new legislation that was introduced today also builds on our Strong Mayors Building Home Act, which was recently passed by the legislature. It further proposes changes to the Municipal Act and the City of Toronto Act and other legislation. So if passed, the heads of council in the City of Toronto and the City of Ottawa would have additional governance tools and increased powers to align municipal decision-making with provincial priorities. Priorities like building 1.5 new housing starts over the next 10 years, supporting additional infrastructure for these new homes, and expanding the footprint of transit-oriented communities so more people can live, work, and play near and with the convenience of public transit. These mayors would do this by proposing municipal bylaws and amendments to existing bylaws that align with provincial priorities, which council could then pass if by more than 1/3 of members vote in favor. So these proposals are bold. I'm not going to walk away from that, but they reflect the severity of the housing crisis that's facing our province today. And we need to cut through this NIMBYism and banana attitudes. I answered your question the last time I was here, Jeff. This build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone mentality are holding back the construction of housing. So in conclusion, these proposed changes complement our More Homes Built Faster Housing Supply Action Plan, will build on Ontario's desire to address the housing supply crisis by building 1.5 million homes over the next decade. We're working hard to ensure that our cities, towns, and rural communities grow with a mix of ownership and rental housing types that meet all the needs of Ontarians, right from single-family homes to townhomes to mid-rise apartments. We also remain committed to supporting our municipal partners as they work with our government to increase housing supply. And if we're going to be successful, we need to ensure that municipalities have what they need to deliver on our shared provincial municipal priorities. That's why we're here today, and that's why we want to continue to work with them. I'd welcome any questions that everyone have. Minister Smith and I are pleased to be with you today.
Minister, not to get all 1997 on you guys, but is this the first step toward mega cities, so that you would have amalgamations of Mississauga and Brampton, say, things like that, and getting rid of the regional level of government, as we saw getting rid of the metro level of government back in 1997 by the last Tory government?
Well, and that's the reason you're bringing it up, because we're talking about facilitators. But this time in 2022, it's solely to build upon the strong mayor powers that we've given Toronto and Ottawa. To get the next phase of this, we need to ensure that we have the right people in place to work with a facilitator on those things that need to be dealt with for strong mayor powers. There's no sense giving someone strong mayor powers and then have another level of government that stands in the way of getting shovels in the ground faster. So it's very important that those existing chairs and existing regional councils and regional staff work with our appointed facilitator on that shared priority of housing starts.
So you don't want to get rid of the regional level of government in those six?
I'm not going to presuppose the discussions that take place by the facilitator. my goal today is to put a piece of legislation in place that does exactly what the Premier and I want, and that's to expand strong mayor powers in some of our biggest municipalities. You know, you look at those lower tier municipalities, the 20 of the 29 have a housing target. Their housing target represents about 627,000 of those 1.5 million homes. So just like when you asked me about strong mayors in Toronto and Ottawa, and that I had to concentrate on that, I'm now concentrating on 6 regions with some provincial resources to ensure that we can expand the strong mayor powers further.
If the facilitator, say in Peel, says you don't need the Peel region anymore because Mississauga is going to go off and be in its own with its own strong mayor, and Brampton has its own strong mayor, and maybe Caledon or whatever could amalgamate with Brampton. I mean, is that you're leaving that open?
Yeah, I want to make sure that we look at these 6 regions under the lens of how can we expand strong mayors, and how can we provide the necessary tools to those member municipalities so that we can get shovels in the ground and build that 1.5 million homes. Like I said to all of you, when I talked about the need for success with Toronto and Ottawa, based on in the next decade, we feel that a third of the growth is going to take place in Toronto and Ottawa. So I had to take my time and focus on the 2 of them and get it right. Now the focus becomes those 6 regions. And that's why we need to make sure that we have continuity with those 3 municipalities that typically appoint their chair. And I want to ensure that when we appoint the facilitator and move to the next step of this that we be honest, open, and transparent, that at the end of the day we want a process that works in all 6 regions so that strong mayor powers can be expanded, just like the Premier has told all of you is our priority.
Explain that. Why do you need to appoint those chairs? Is there some of them that aren't going to get elected by their regional councils that you're concerned about? Why take that step? Voters voted in an election just a few weeks ago, thinking that they'd get to pick the ones that they voted for.
But Jeff, again, I want to reiterate, I'm not making any changes to any elected chair. I feel very strongly that we need to have consistency with the 3 municipalities because of their size and the opportunity to be able to hit our housing targets. So I have confidence that with Jim and Nando and Wayne at the helm, that we'll be able to work with our facilitator and ensure that happens. So I look forward to the other 3 elected chairs that were elected by their constituency. I look forward to working with them as well. But
you elect the regional councilors,
which we're not changing. You know, we're not changing them.
They would normally pick the chair, but you're intervening in that process and picking a chair for them.
But we want to ensure, we want to get it right for the 6 regions. The 3 regions, we know the 3 chairs. We're confident that we can work with them, and that whoever I appoint ultimately as a facilitator will be able to have that opportunity to expand the strong mayor powers, but at the same time. So there's nothing. I know it's bold that we're making these decisions, but again, the bill is being tabled prior to these regional councils meeting. Again, we want to be open, transparent, tell them where we want to end up with this process.
So
Why do you call it a strong mayor when they must implement your agenda and you're prepared to Bigfoot them if you don't agree with what they decide?
But Antonella, on October 24th, you had literally every council in our province had housing as a priority. I was back at my home city, which is a very, very small city, and the mayor, the new mayor that just got sworn in, said his number 2 issues were building housing and homelessness. That I could replicate that in almost every council chamber in Ontario. So if you're going to end election day on October 24th, and we all acknowledge that that's the biggest issue that's going to face Ontario's 444 municipalities, it makes sense for the government to lay some priority on it. So since our June election, this will be the 3rd bill that I've tabled, all on the same subject. With the same goal in mind, and that's to get shovels in the ground faster and put us closer to that goal. That's exactly why we're moving in this direction today.
Well, what do you announce today that helps the homeless?
Well, we're going to continue to work with our municipalities on the homeless. We're going to continue to work with the federal government. You know, I read the Auditor General's report yesterday at the federal level, and I think provinces and territories need to engage the federal government to make sure that we get those outcomes, so that we can show that we've made a consistent and measured improvement in homelessness. So that's something we take very seriously. But we took a plan to the public on June the 2nd that a re-elected government under the leadership of Premier Ford was going to put a plan in place to build 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years. Everything that I've done, this bill today, the bill that's before committee across the hall, the Strong Mayor's bill that was passed earlier in our mandate, all of it is towards the same goal. And we made a further commitment to Ontarians that every year in a re-elected government under the leadership of Premier Ford, that we would have a housing supply action plan every year. So things that aren't incorporated in this bill today or the bill that's before the House, we'll be open to talk to Ontarians about what other measures we can put forward to help eradicating homelessness, to make sure that we get to the 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years, and that we also deal with the new immigration targets. We want to welcome new Canadians to our province. We know that a significant amount are going to come to Ontario. We need to make sure we have a plan that course corrects to ensure that that happens.
Minister, did you give any heads up to developers beforehand, before the Greenbelt decision was announced?
So we posted the Greenbelt decision, as you know, and it's open for comment for 30 days. The other piece in this bill that Minister Smith has complements that piece. There was one legislative piece that needed to be added to that posting, and this is what's incorporated in this bill. But if you're asking, who do I meet with, and who does the associate minister meet with, and who does the parliamentary, we meet with people that build homes all the time. It doesn't matter whether they're private home builders, whether they're not-for-profits, whether it's Habitat for Humanity, whether it's a builder that builds 1,000 homes a year or one home a year. We meet with people that are in the housing space. That's part of being the housing minister.
Is it a coincidence that the DeGasperis family, Rice Group, Fieldgate, these guys keep making out like bandits when you guys announce big things like the Greenbelt, Highway 413?
Well, I've said to you many times, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're looking at assisting the government of Ontario with building 1.5 million homes, we want to work with you.
Minister, what are you hoping the facilitators will tell you that your municipal governance review from a few years ago, that you never made that report public, that didn't tell you?
Well, Alison, the municipal governance review from 2019 was a fairly broad review. As I said earlier, both in the House and here today, this is a very targeted assessment by a facilitator to ensure that we put the right policies and procedures in place to facilitate the extension of strong mayor powers to those other communities. So it's a very much different assessment in 2022, geared towards that next expansion of powers outside of Toronto and Ottawa.
We saw in the Fez earlier this week, the projections for housing starts were quite a bit down from what they were in the budget. Obviously, a lot of factors like inflation at play. Do you think that, given all of those external factors, that Ontario still can hit the 1.5 million?
I think they can. I'm very optimistic that with the amount of priority our government has put on the housing file, the fact that we've committed a number of bills so far in the mandate and committed to ensuring that each and every year we have an additional bill. But there are external factors. You've talked about some of them in terms of interest rates and inflation. There are many things that are out of the government's control. What's within our control is to ensure that those policies and procedures that are under the provincial jurisdiction, that we do everything we can to investigate it. And this discussion today that we're having as part of my bill introduction, we'll do that at a regional level to some of our biggest and most fast-growing communities. So I think it's timely, but we need everybody to do their part. It doesn't matter whether it's the province or our municipal partners. We also need the federal government. All three levels need to do their part, and we also need to challenge those in the private sector to make sure that they help us meet our targets.
Minister,
You're proposing giving the mayors of Toronto and Ottawa the ability to pass a bylaw with 1/3 plus one.
Yes.
And you say that's to promote more housing.
Yeah. So
But
those.
sorry, forgive me for interrupting.
Sure.
But you're not limiting that to specific housing bylaws, correct?
No. So to clarify. The additional powers that are part of this new bill will be required on bylaws around provincial priorities. So things like I said in my address, the 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years, infrastructure to help to help build those homes, and also things like transit-oriented communities that we want to continue to work with municipalities to provide that opportunity where somebody
Why not
can
limit
live,
it
work.
to housing if that's the intent? Otherwise, the premier can
Well,
dictate whatever he wants.
Yeah, you know, our decision as a government was to provide provincial priorities in a renewed system. This is a new system for Ontario. We decided that provincial priorities were the best way that we could move forward. If something emerges as a provincial priority that we want to include, we'll have to have that conversation with our municipal partners.
What's
But
wrong with
at
the
the same,
two-thirds
but at,
veto,
but
though, Steve?
well, the 1/3 I think provides some certainty. You know, we've had some discussions with Toronto and Ottawa, and certainly out of our discussions with Toronto, we've made this addition to the powers. It just provides some certainty.
So Tory asked for this?
Well, we've had a number of discussions. I have to clarify, you know, with who and to what degree. But I think this certainly provides the certainty that those two big cities require when it comes to a provincial priority. So
Has
All right,
Mark
just
Sutcliffe
on
in
that
Ottawa
subject.
already given any indication that he's more willing to entertain?
I think the Premier is trying to have a meeting with the new mayor. I don't know any more details than that, but I know there's been some conversations around having an opportunity to meet Mayor Sutcliffe in the very near future. So if I'm involved in that, I'll look forward to that happening.